Turn me up just a little bit. Yeah, it's that man space vibe. Step in the zone, microphone check. Russ and Les got the real intellect. Talk smooth like jazz on a late night set. With a convo deep and the topics connect. From the struggles to the wins, they address it with grace. Drop lines so cool, you can feel the bass. Two kings of the craft, and you know the rest. Kick back, pour a drink, welcome to the space. You go chillin' with Russ and Les. You go chillin' with Russ and Les. You go chillin' with Russ and Les. Hang out, cause now you vibing with nothing but the best. Space forever.
Welcome into another edition of the Manspace Podcast. Now, this is the voice of Russ, and today we have another edition of the Russ and Company series where I interview some amazing people all across the globe, and today is yet no different. Now, over the last few weeks, we've been doing some shows talking about testosterone, low T, and trying to help men increase their testosterone. But have you ever heard of something called toxic bile? Well, today we're going to kind of talk about that because that seems to be something that has a direct impact on your health levels and, for guys, your testosterone. So today I brought in Dr. Garrett Smith, also known as the Nutrition Detective. He is the world's leading expert on vitamin A toxicity. Man, now this is really, really interesting because a lot of times when we think about vitamins and vitamin A and everything, we think of it being good for us, right? Well, we got some questions today. We're going to learn about this with our guest today, Dr. Garrett Smith. So welcome in. Dr. Garrett, how are you, sir?
I'm very good. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the invitation. So right off the bat, before we really jump into it, if you could share a little bit about yourself with the Manspace Nation, why they should really get to know you.
Well, we are here. I mean, I got into health when I was a teenager. I started noticing stuff like when I would drink a glass of milk, I'd get very stuffy before I was even finished with the glass. I had some skin issues, like skin fungal issues, that I took ketoconazole for when I was a kid, which is an antifungal. And one of the things I learned later, I kind of always wondered after that, like why I couldn't train as hard as my peers and other things like that. And then I look into ketoconazole as an adult, as a physician, and then I see ketoconazole like absolutely destroys testosterone, and it's all over the research. So we find these things, and these were kind of how I got into it. Like natural artificial sweeteners like Equal gave me like migraine headaches. And so I was kind of sensitive in a way that it opened my eyes to maybe a lot of the things that we are doing or not doing aren't good for us. So that eventually led to, my dad was a dentist. I got into I found out about naturopathic medical school when I was working in a supplement store and enrolled there. And then 4 years later, I was out and doing my own practice. I've been in practice now 20 years. And 50 years old. I'm holding up really well. No, I experimented with a lot of the guys out there might be on testosterone therapy already. I tested it out probably about 10 years ago. And I personally didn't, there were the other stuff that goes along with it I didn't enjoy. And then now we've got the last time without being on testosterone replacement, I think at age 47, I tested, my testosterone was 900. Without being on
that's good.
anything.
Yeah, that's very good.
And so we're really working on, we get people, when people come to us to work with us, whether they're doing our kind of do-it-yourself approach, which is the Love Your Liver program, or whether they're working with one of my health facilitators like Nathan or Kelsey or myself, they often want to get off hormones, or they would like to. Like, I mean, nobody really wants to be stuck taking something for the rest of their life, but that's kind of the way that hormone therapy is, right? It's just like they put you on it and you're expected to be on it forever. Well, I did it. I got off of it. We have people regularly get off of thyroid hormone, which is kind of unheard of in the industry. We actually literally fix their thyroids. We have men and women come off their hormone therapy. So what we're mainly doing is we are working on fixing the toxicities that cause the problems. Like, I mean, people know that if your car engine was so filthy that it can't work as well as it should, you know, it's going to take you more gas to get where you're going. It's going to take more of everything to do what you need to do. And you probably won't, and it won't perform as well. So there's the toxicities, and then there's the nutrient deficiencies, like stuff that we literally need, like zinc and selenium, to make testosterone. If we don't have it, we can't make it. If you don't have gasoline in your car, you don't get to go anywhere. So we work on these things. It's kind of the foundation. If the foundation of what we are built of is either too toxic or not present, like nutrients, then we get problems. So that's really the basis of what we're doing, is fixing those two things, toxicities and deficiencies. And then the body fixes the rest. Our God-given amazing body can then repair and do its job the way it's supposed to. That's what we're after.
So I went to an iridologist several years ago, where they do the check with the little prism. They look in your eye and everything. And so during that session, the guy was explaining to us about, myself and my wife, about dairy, and dairy being the root of most problems within the body. And, you know, you mentioned early on about having the problems with milk and things. We did an experiment where we got about 90%, 90 to 95% dairy free. We did about 6-7 months or so. During that time frame, and normally I would do a flu shot every year. I didn't do a flu shot that one year. I never had more than just a runny nose that entire winter. And the only reason I had the runny nose was just because I was outside too long. Other than that, I was perfectly fine all winter. And I would love to say I was 100% dairy free, but it's so many things that you eat where dairy is actually hidden in other names and things. But just knowing that, how much of that type of, have you done any type of research into the effects of dairy itself causing the toxic bile?
So, well, yeah, we should probably take some time to explain the toxic bile paradigm and that stuff. But about, just to hit on the dairy thing, because like there's a big resurgence in raw dairy and these other things, and people will say, well, raw dairy is completely fine, and I have a nuanced stance on dairy. You know, it's been shown that this is real. Like, the darker somebody's skin, the less lactose tolerant they are. And it goes completely with skin color. So there's that. So if somebody doesn't tolerate lactose, then dairy's not gonna. That's just one thing, though. Right. Dairy. I mean, health practitioners, for those who are all about raw dairy, like, for hundreds and hundreds of years, it has been known by health practitioners that if you have somebody who's not well, especially if they're very snotty and they're tending to get sick a lot, taking dairy out of their diet is generally a good thing. And this has been done long before they had pasteurized dairy and homogenized dairy and all this stuff. So people who claim that these modern things that we do to dairy are what caused all the problems, dairy's been regarded as a health issue for a very long time. Okay. Now, two of the things that humans, we don't suckle milk for our entire lives. Like, that's not a normal thing. So why would we expect to be suckling from an animal that is not our species for the rest of our lives? That doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit our design. Like, why don't other animals take over, other species to get their milk? Like, it just doesn't make sense. So is dairy is it a legitimate food? Yes. Can it have lots of problems with it? Yes. Do we make dairy literally worse for us by pasteurizing it? So superheating it, right? People don't realize, but the ultra pasteurization that they do to make dairy stable for shelves, like they literally run it between two superheated metal plates. They shoot it between them, like as a quick stream. It's like 400 degrees in that time it's between the two plates. And they are denaturing proteins. They are causing all sorts of problems. So there's the pasteurization, there's the homogenization, where they're breaking up the fat molecules so they stay in solution. There's the fortification of milk where they're adding vitamins A and D to it. I mean, vitamin D is literally sold. You can go to your grocery store, your hardware store, and look at Terra D3, TERA-D3. That's the name of the product. So D3 is in the name. And then you can look at another product called D-Con, which is a very interesting name. D-Con. And they are both literally rat poisons that use vitamin D3 as the active ingredient. They tell you in the name.
Oh, wow.
So we have people out there, we are fortifying our food with basically rat poison, and it has, in the research, accidentally over fortifying dairy with D3 has literally killed children before. I mean, people have literally died from over fortified dairy. So we have that whole problem. And then vitamin A is a big thing, which I don't believe is a vitamin. And it's a toxin. And we can go over other things that relate to men about that, like how one of the pharmaceutical mechanism of how they want to make a male contraceptive pill, how they want to make a male birth control pill, is literally they are stopping one of the enzymes in vitamin A detoxification.
Wow.
They're stopping vitamin A detox, and that is making men sterile. Like, so there's a lot to this. So in general, dairy should be looked at as, it's something that may or may not be okay for each individual. And the more things that we do to it, the worse it gets. So there's just, that's just one thing, I'm not totally anti-dairy for everybody, but as we start looking at it in different people, like kids, we got research showing that the more vitamin A that kids get, whether it's in utero, so inside their mother or out once they get out, whether it's dairy or vegetables or supplements, like the more allergic they are. And there's people out there who are feeding their kids tons of eggs and tons of dairy and tons of all that stuff. And they wonder, like, it's literally in a certain community out there, all their kids are terribly allergic and they can't seem to figure it out because they keep giving them natural vitamin A and they think it's going to fix everything. And we just watch them get sicker and sicker. So it's kind of wild. There's a lot of stuff going on out there.
So I've always heard, you mentioned eggs as being, a high source of vitamin A. But I've also heard, when it comes to a lot of people take out the yolk and want to do egg whites and stuff like that, thinking it's healthier. I've always heard that the egg yolk is actually the best part of the egg because that's where the zinc is found.
That may be true regarding zinc, but I don't think there's a whole lot in there.
Okay.
Like, so is it there? Yeah. Have I ever heard of it being like a big deal? No. In terms of like the amount, like compared to red meat or something like that.
Okay.
So, I mean, but red meat is like something like 5 to 10 times more zinc than chicken. So it's like red meat is really, really up there in terms of zinc. But so with eggs, eggs are a whole nother topic in themselves. I mean, the two, here's the reality when we can just look at what's going on in people today.
Right.
The two most allergic foods, like tested in people that people react to both symptom wise and on blood tests and skin prick tests and all that stuff. The two most allergic foods are dairy and eggs. If these things were so wonderful for us, then why are our bodies having such problems with them? And people will say, oh, it's how they feed the chickens. Oh, it's what they do to the milk. And I'm just going, dairy has been an issue for a very long time. And people never ate as many eggs as they do today. Like, I think somebody was saying, I swear I saw this statistic somewhere, in a wild chicken, if you had a wild chicken, they maybe lay 1 or 2 eggs a month. They're not laying an egg a day. And one of the ways that people get their chickens to lay eggs way more than they used to is they feed them tons of vitamin A in their feed. It's literally in their feed. And then people brag about how darkly orange or yellow colored the yolks are, which is a sign of more and more vitamin A. And and then chicken eggs have a lot of what's called phosphatidylcholine in them, or egg lecithin, if you wanted to call it that, which is so they've got fat in it, they've got lecithin in it, and they've got the vitamin A. That is exactly how we absorb vitamin A into our system.
Right.
So in terms of what I do to get people better, which is I often put them on a lower vitamin A diet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, that's a very regular thing that we do, and we are helping people to fix all sorts of issues that people didn't think could be fixed. Egg yolks are generally not something that we do. And you'll notice in that whole thing of me talking about the egg yolk, I didn't mention cholesterol, because that's not the issue. Everybody else tries to focus on that. That's not the issue. But we just, if somebody wanted to do egg whites, we're fine with that. Or if somebody's, dealing with their kids and their kids love eggs or whatever, and they say, how do I fix this? I say, you can always cut down. If you're making scrambled eggs or whatever, just cut out half the yolks. Right. Nobody will notice any difference, and you still improved the situation. So, with the food choices that we get into it's important, and we are because of the food availability today, we have the opportunity to way overdo certain foods that would have never been that available to us in the past.
Right.
Like, I mean, I do the example of the Little House on the Prairie books. Like, when they were out on the prairie, they had one cow for the whole family. And then who gets the milk first? Well, the calf. And there's only milk while the calf is, suckling, and so once that calf stops, the milk stops. And then people who think milk fat is everything, and butter and cream and all this stuff, I go, okay, so what do you have after you, if you want butter, what milk do you have left? You have skim milk. So all of a sudden, you're not drinking full fat milk and getting butter and getting cream and doing all these high fat things. You're getting skim milk and butter. And then often what they would do in the past was to fatten the pigs, they would feed the pigs skim milk to fatten them.
Wow.
That starts to raise some eyebrows, where you go, wait, they fed pigs skim milk and they knew it would fatten them up. And it's, that's what you can look that up.
Okay. So let's circle back to toxic bile, because we went on this egg tangent. So let's circle back to toxic bile and just kind of explain that one a little bit.
Okay, so it used to be called, this is a theory that I came up with after learning about vitamin A toxicity and then looking into the work of a gentleman named Anthony Mawson, who was a researcher at, I forget was it the University of Louisville? I think, I don't remember exactly where he was, but he's a great guy, and he was starting to figure out his son got brain cancer. So he started researching into that, and he found that vitamin A could be connected to that. And so he started writing, I think he's got 34 papers that he wrote about the connections of vitamin A leaking out of the liver. So like when the liver gets damaged or when things get stressed or whatever, he was showing that the liver could leak vitamin A into the bloodstream. And this caused, they knew the symptoms of excess vitamin A in the system, and they could look exactly like these various disease conditions. So like I said, he did 34 different papers on this. So I was working with this. I was getting people to lower their vitamin A. They were getting better in many, many ways. And then I came up with this idea of how is this happening? How are people this self-poisoning? And so there's something in the literature called cholestasis. Chola, C-H-O-L-E, is related to bile. Stasis is stagnation. So it's bile stagnation. So if you think of, let's say, a river or a creek, a small creek, where it's going along and something blocks it or gets in the way of the flow. Well, then you get stagnant water first, right? Where there's still enough room to hold the water behind the blockage. And then once the blockage builds up enough, it starts to spill into different areas, right? The creek finds a new way because it has to. Well, this same thing can happen with bile in our body. So it can leak backwards and go into places it shouldn't. So let me back up on what is bile.
So what you were explaining, is that like leaky gut? Is that okay?
Yeah. So I'll head into that now. So let's start with what is bile and what's it supposed to do. So bile is made by your liver. It has useful purposes, like it helps you to digest and absorb fats. It helps to keep down certain populations of bad bacteria. And it has good things that it does. So we're not anti-bile. We are actually very pro-bile that is not excessively toxic. But what your liver does, the thing that people don't realize about what the liver does, the liver has three main jobs. The liver filters your blood. It is literally a filter. There are influencers out there who claim that the liver is not a filter and it doesn't do this. And I'm like, a filter is something used to take stuff out of another thing. Like when you think of a water filter, it's taking stuff out of the water.
Right.
For the liver to do its job of running detox process and all that stuff, it has to pull stuff out of the blood and hold on to it so that it can then process it. Like that's the definition of a filter. Are the kidneys a filter too? Yes. But we're going to mainly focus on the liver, because when the liver doesn't do its job, then the kidneys have to work even harder. So the liver is a filter. It is what I call a sewage processing plant also, which is the detox processes. The mistake that a lot of people make is they just say the liver detoxes things, and that it's almost like the liver makes things go poof and disappear. Like once they hit the liver, they're detoxed and they're not a problem anymore. This is not true at all. The liver can change the form of things. It can biotransform things. And sometimes it makes things into less toxic things, but also sometimes it can make them into more toxic things. So this is the sewage processing plant. A big example of the liver making things into more toxic things is with alcohol, ethanol. Ethanol comes into the system. Ethanol is not actually what causes your hangovers. It's not what causes alcohol poisoning. It's not what causes the damage that alcohol causes. That is acetaldehyde, which is one detox step down the road. So ethanol turns into, it's an alcohol. It goes through an enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase, which turns it into acetaldehyde. And this is hangovers. This is alcohol poisoning. This is what harms people from alcohol. I mean, the ethanol is not great, but it's not the biggest thing. And then it has to go through another enzyme called ALDH, which is actually aldehyde dehydrogenase, which is really important in its own right. But anyway, so the liver processes toxins. So you can still have something that's less toxic or more toxic, but it's still in the system. And then the liver, the third big function that the liver does is it stores things. It accumulates things.
Right.
It accumulates toxic metals. It accumulates microplastics. It accumulates all this stuff. And part of the reason for this is so it pulls it out of your bloodstream, because if these toxins stay in your bloodstream too long or they build up, they could literally shut down your heart, shut down your brain. They could cause you to not be around anymore. So the liver takes the hit. This is like when you think of fatty liver, why is the liver accumulating fat? Well, are we exposed to a lot of fat soluble, also known as fat storable toxins? Yeah. So does the liver then make more fat to store them? It does. And so the liver growing in size can be so it makes more storage for toxins, because it can't get rid of them fast enough. I liken this to people, you have like too many jobs coming in, like too much work is coming in to do. Can you just like throw away the jobs or just get rid of them, or just, you can ignore them, but they just build up, right? You can't just not do the job. Like your body cannot just not do the detox that it has to do. So if it can't keep up, right, you just accumulate this stack of papers, this stack of jobs on your desk, and you hope that at some point the work coming in is maybe going to slow down, or you're going to speed up your work so that you can eat into that pile. That's what your body hopes with by storing it. It's hoping that it can someday get rid of it. So those are the three main jobs of the liver. If the liver fails, you're dead. The liver failure is death. Like you got to get a new liver or you're toast. So the liver can take punishment for a very long time. So what does the liver do to get rid of these toxins? The liver makes bile. That is how the liver can get rid of these toxins that it has running through it. So by definition, if your liver does all your detoxing for you and the liver makes bile to get rid of those toxins, then by definition, the bile is the most toxic fluid in your body. Nasty stuff. So it has jobs to do, but it's also nasty stuff that you want to get rid of. You don't want to keep a ton of it around. You want it to do its job and get rid of it. So then your liver pushes the bile into the gallbladder, and then that goes into your intestine. Okay. Well, one of the things, there's two real big things that we're working on in terms of that are in the bile and come in through foods that we are working on. One is vitamin A. Now, here's the connection. So you were mentioning leaky gut.
Yes.
Well, what I'm going to say is this cholestasis, this bile, if the bile becomes too toxic over time, like what you want to have happen is the bile goes into the intestines. It goes through the intestines. You're going to absorb some of it. That's normal. And that goes right back to the liver. It's called enterohepatic circulation. So some of it that you reabsorb in your guts, because your guts absorb anything they touch, like they are trying to absorb it. They're not picky. Your skin is not picky. Your gut is not picky. This is why it's really important to not put toxic stuff on your skin or in your mouth, because we absorb it. People sometimes have this delusion that our body can just pick and choose what it absorbs, and it doesn't. It doesn't have that. So the bile goes into your intestines. You're going to reabsorb a lot of it. That goes right back to the liver, but then you're going to poop out some of it. That's what you want to do. A normal standard American diet, people are going to reabsorb 95% of their bile. Goes right back to the liver, and they only poop out 5% of it. Okay. So that's the normal route. When the bile starts becoming too toxic, because I just told you, right, 95% of it gets recycled, goes right back to the liver. So if you have this toxicity going on, it's going to just keep concentrating and going around in this circle. Then when you've heard about the gut biome and the microbiome, and everybody's, concerned about their gut bacteria. Well, what is the thing we are applying to the gut bacteria multiple times a day that is then toxic and could cause bad bacteria to grow? The bile. So the bile is literally making the gut biome change, and your gut biome can actually change the bile and make it into more toxic types of bile, which then goes right back to your liver. So we have this really vicious cycle. If we don't know what we're doing, it's this vicious cycle of creating more and more toxicity. Okay, so then we get into the leaky stuff. The bile can, over time, and it does, become so toxic that it then starts eating holes in things. We have research showing it can eat holes in the liver cells that make the bile. It can eat holes in the little teeny bile ducts in the liver. So like they're almost like tiny blood vessels. They're bile ducts, but they're small like blood vessels. And then it can eat holes in the big bile ducts. It can eat holes in your gallbladder. It can eat holes in your intestines. We call that leaky gut or intestinal permeability. If it goes backwards up into your stomach, it eats holes in your stomach. What do we call that? We call those ulcers. If it goes up into your esophagus, we call it Barrett's esophagus, and it literally eats holes in your esophagus. That's from like people vomiting or just too much GERD. Which, notice they call it gastroesophageal reflux disease anymore. They don't call it acid reflux so much anymore because it's mainly bile that's going up there. So they're calling it gastroesophageal instead of acid. So anyway, so it can eat holes in all these things. Okay, so how does it do this? Well, when we talk about vitamin A, one of the downstream detox products, when your liver is breaking down vitamin A to detox it, one of the last things it turns into is retinoic acid.
Retinoic acid, okay.
Retinoic acid. So if a woman were to go into a aesthetics clinic or place, she might get what is called a yellow peel. Well, yellow is one of the colors of vitamin A. A yellow peel is all trans retinoic acid. It literally eats away the top several layers of cells. And so then new stuff can come up underneath it. It's stimulating the cells underneath it to make more, but it's literally dissolving several layers of cells before it does that.
Is that the same as a chemical peel?
Yes, it is a type of chemical peel. Yeah, sorry, I didn't say that. And in the research, there was I have a quote from a dermatologist who said, we literally use retinoic acid to induce controlled wounds on the skin. That's what what a chemical peel is. You're inducing a controlled wound. Okay, now imagine if you were inducing uncontrolled wounds on your gut lining. That's leaky gut.
Gotcha. Okay.
And we have research connecting bile with leaky gut and vitamin A. There's theoretical papers out there connecting it with that. And it makes sense because it's literally a chemical peel. Okay, now the other thing that we've been working on a lot lately is nickel. And nickel toxicity is showing up all over the place. And nickel can be shown to like damage the skin very quickly. Like how many people have allergies to cheap jewelry, where they just put on the cheap jewelry and all of a sudden it's irritating their skin. People have earrings and it's crusty and gross all the time because it's constantly getting irritated. The nickel problem and vitamin A, they go like hand in hand. The nickel thing is fairly new for me to get into. But in terms of you guys out there, like, here's what I can say. Hormones and sexual function and all that stuff
Right.
I can tell you that I've improved even further since I've been taking the nickel, lowering the nickel in my diet and fixing that. So I was working on other things first, but nickel is what's called a metalloestrogen. So is copper. This literally means that they stimulate the estrogen receptors. They act like estrogen. They're not estrogen, but they stimulate the estrogen receptors. So you're like basically consuming things that are estrogenic, which doesn't help your testosterone at all. Especially when they're toxic metals, and they both of those can accumulate in your testes. So anyway, so the nickel thing and the vitamin A thing, they are causing leaky gut, and this is known in the research, especially for nickel, that it damages what are called tight junctions. So we have these things, and so we are working on what we are trying to do. Back to that the big picture of what we are doing. We are working on reducing, minimizing, eliminating toxins coming in where we can. And it's important to know what the toxins are, right? Because if people think vitamin A is good for them and they try to eat more of it, that's like the worst kind of toxin you could do, is where you think it's good for you, but it's actually not. So we have lowering the intake of toxins. We have getting the body the nutrients that it needs to both protect itself and to help with the detox. Like zinc is antagonistic. Zinc helps us fight against both vitamin A and nickel and copper. And zinc, if you look at, I went over a paper a couple weeks ago about how they gave zinc to older gentlemen, and it doubled their testosterone in something like 8 weeks. I mean, zinc is critical. Zinc is absolutely critical. So then we have that. And then, the last thing we do is we are trying to facilitate the removal of stored toxins. We store toxins in the liver. We store toxins in the kidneys. We store toxins in the body fat. We store toxins in the bone. The body can get rid of this stuff, but generally the first thing that we have to do is we need to reduce the intake of it. Kind of like that jobs thing, right? We got to reduce the number of jobs coming in so we can start catching up. And then let's say once we catch up on all the built up jobs, then we can start working on the jobs that we've been waiting on forever, or that we've always been wanting to do but didn't have the time. So that when we think of the body in terms of systems and approaches that we would normally do in our real life, like I liken the body to a car a lot of times, like the electrical system, and if you wanted to call it the plumbing system, the liquid, the fluid system, the things that we do need to replace, and the things that we need to fuel it with. We need gasoline to make things run. And when we do that, then it starts to make more sense to people, instead of people just making claims out there that they'll say like blueberries help you detox. And I'm like, actually, no, they don't. I could go in the research and show you that they literally don't. They do the opposite. So we get it slows ALDH, polyphenols, the brightly colored things in a lot of plant foods that are called antioxidants that we're told are good for us, literally slow down your detox stuff. And they've never helped you to detox at all. So, but people just make up stuff on the internet.
Yeah, there's so many things out there that I've seen where it's like mix in the mornings, drink cinnamon with some apple cider vinegar and put this in it, and it'll help detox your liver.
Yeah, well, like an example of, so this would be an example. Okay, so cinnamon. The main thing that you're tasting as cinnamon is called cinnamaldehyde. Aldehydes in the chemical world are generally accepted as being toxic to us. So we're literally eating aldehydes to try to do whatever they're doing. And the more aldehydes you take in, I tell people this, the more toxic you get, the slower your detox runs. It'd be just like the more dirty your engine gets, the slower it runs, and the more gas you got to use to go the same distance. So it all makes sense. So there's the cinnamon as an example, right? And then we go, okay, so what is vinegar? Where does that come from? Well, ethanol. So when we eat sugar, right, they turn apples into vinegar, right? They can make apple cider along the way too, right? So you got the sugar in apples can then turn into ethanol, alcohol. Ethanol turns into acetaldehyde, and acetaldehyde is then detoxed into acetic acid. I just want you to know this, that little ethanol detox pathway that I just went over, like generally we understand, yes, people are still going to drink alcohol. And alcohol is just a poison. There is no health benefits to alcohol, no matter how many billions the alcohol industry spends to make studies to say that 1 or 2 drinks a day is good for you. Because they know if you drink 1 or 2 drinks a day, anybody who's had alcohol knows that 1 or 2 tends to, over a couple weeks or a couple months, leads to 3 or 4 a night. It leads to the bottle of wine a night. It always escalates. They know this. So if they can just hook you on the idea that 1 or 2 drinks a night is good for you, they know you're gonna slip up and do more. So
I mean, there's a lot of people that swear by a hot toddy when they get the sniffles. So a little bit of rock and ride, but yeah.
Oh, this is important. No. So okay, well let me hit on that in a second. But that detox pathway I just went over for vitamin A.
Yeah.
Or sorry, for alcohol. The exact same enzymes, alcohol dehydrogenase and aldehyde dehydrogenase, are used to detox vitamin A. So we have a known toxin, ethanol turns into acetaldehyde, turns into acetic acid. Vitamin A, retinol, alcohol. Retinol is an alcohol. It turns into retinaldehyde, an aldehyde, and then it turns into retinoic acid. And we're going to listen to the nutrition science, and they're going to say, okay, alcohol has you do not have to have alcohol to survive.
Right.
It's generally a toxin. Okay. But you need vitamin A, which goes through the exact same detox pathways and is an alcohol and an aldehyde and an acid that we somehow need to run. Well, what I can tell people who say that, well, that can happen. We have people who have literally taken their vitamin A levels, their serum retinol, their blood vitamin A levels, to below the lab's detection limits. So they may not necessarily be 0, because you can't eat a 0 vitamin A diet. It's basically impossible to be healthy and eat a 0 vitamin A diet. There's vitamin A in all sorts of things. That doesn't mean it's good for you.
Right.
But we've seen people go to basically the effectively 0, and they have no vitamin A problems, no supposed vitamin A deficiency problem. So therefore, is it a vitamin? Is it necessary? I'm going to say that we kind of proved that it's not. And I have plenty of research showing where they find people with low vitamin A, like all of like most of Central and South America back in the 70s. They said there's vitamin A deficiency here everywhere, but there's no symptoms. And it starts to fall apart. But anyway,
I guess what was the other part you
were on? What was the other part you were on before that?
So I actually moved off of that because now you've gotten me down a whole nother rabbit hole.
Okay. Okay. I know I do that.
Because now I'm going back to vitamin A, because they tell you that you need vitamin A to support growth and vision and for better cell function.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's what they tell us. The thing about science is when they find the thing about nutritional science, I mean, depending upon how much of a theorist you are in certain types of conspiracies, the Rockefellers were tasked with, remember how there was the soybean fad where they were like, soybeans are good for you and all this stuff, and then everybody's like, no, they're estrogenic and they're really not good for you, and you don't guys especially don't want to do it. Well, back then, so they've always done this where they have like something that they need to create a demand for. Well, the Rockefellers have always been very into the dairy industry.
Yes.
And they wanted to, at the time, to figure, they actually, this is the story, was back then they were worried that they were going to run out of drugs to manufacture and sell. They were like, I don't know how many more of these we can make. They've obviously figured out how to make plenty more of them, but they were worried about being able to make enough of the pharmaceutical medication. So what did they do? They were like, we got to find things in food, especially dairy, that we can brag about that has health benefits. Right. And then so we can push that on people and then say that they need more. And I want you to think about the calcium requirements, like the RDA of calcium. When you look at the RDA of calcium, it's, let's just say it's at least 1,000 milligrams for an adult. The only way that anybody can ever get there is dairy. People can't eat, they would have to eat a very, very, very specific diet every day in and out to get that amount of calcium from foods that are not dairy. So then you start going, wait, did they game it so that you have to eat dairy to get your RDA of calcium? They probably did. And then what does dairy provide? Vitamin A, vitamin D, and calcium.
Right.
What's the big push now? They've got the vitamin D everywhere.
Yes.
They're putting literally vitamin A and vitamin D in kids' fruit snacks like Welch's. Some of them got vitamin A and vitamin D. I saw it in apple cinnamon Cheerios or one of the Cheerios. This is not for your benefit, folks. This is as the saying goes, we are the carbon they want to reduce. They're not fortified. They actually literally stopped putting vitamin A on the nutrition facts labels of foods because the FDA said vitamin A deficiency is so rare in the US that we don't need to label it on the labels anymore. But yet now you got companies adding it to sports drinks. They're adding it to milk. They're adding it to alternative drinks. They're adding it to fruit snacks. They're adding it to Cheerios. This is, if you think they may not want us around, we should look very, very hard at that. And then for the people who don't do the supplements and don't eat the processed foods, what are they pushing now? Liver, eggs, dairy, like all this stuff. So you can get vitamin A toxicity, cod liver oil, fish oil. Fish oil is full of vitamin A. So they're going to get it in you either way. And I'm just out here getting people better who have realized that they've done this. They've done like if you wanted to call it jokingly, the vitamin A maxing for a very long time. And their health never got better. It only got worse. Maybe it'd get better for a couple months, but then it would get worse again.
Right.
And so we are helping them fix that. So
when you talk about going on a low vitamin A diet, a lot of times, like we were talking about the dairy earlier, it's very hard to get rid of all of this completely out of your diet.
Yeah.
So according to the Mayo Clinic, it's like 900 micrograms of vitamin A for men, 700 micrograms of vitamin A for women is the daily recommendation. Like when you talk about a low diet, how much, what is the levels that you're talking about people are okay taking?
Well, it definitely depends on where they're at the start.
Okay.
Like, I mean, we have a lot of people come to us who have, they know that their health was originally ruined by Accutane. Accutane is literally 13-cis retinoic acid. They're taking a retinoic acid. And it is one of the most damaging medicines out there. And we have the research showing that when people eat vitamin A from foods, from vegetables, from dairy, whatever, some of it is turned into 13-cis retinoic acid in their body. So if people are eating vitamin A, they're literally taking, in a way, they're putting Accutane in their body. So, and the other thing to remember is that the only really important vitamin that they say don't overdo in pregnancy is vitamin A, because it'll cause birth defects. The same type of birth defects that alcohol does, coincidentally. So anyway, we have this, I think I lost what your question was.
Yeah. So the levels, how much
levels,
is yes.
So what I've come to now is we're in a bit of a transition in our focus of what we are working on as the most important thing. And what we are finding is that the nickel problem is actually more impactful and more important than the vitamin A. So I have people, so I'm going to talk in IUs. I don't remember what the microgram to IUs is.
Right.
But I want people definitely below 1,000 IUs a day, which I believe the RDA is around 3,000 IUs. If we convert the micrograms to the IUs, I don't quite remember. I never remember that conversion off the top of my head. But for people who are coming to us, who once they realize that they are vitamin A toxic, they often find that the lower they go, the better they feel. So we just there's different sensitivities at the start. Some people are really messed up and vitamin A coming in really causes them problems. Some people tolerate a bit more. The key thing that I tell people, the mathematics of it, the very simple mathematics of it is we simply have to get our body to remove more in a day than we're putting in. It's just like a bank account, right? If you wanted to empty a bank account, you just got to take out more each day than you put in. If you wanted to build a bank account, you put in more each day than you take out, right? So if this is the problem with vitamin A, is it is what we call fat storable or fat soluble. So when they normally say fat soluble, I call it fat storable. Your body is storing it. If you take in more than you get rid of, you are literally storing it. And as examples, if you go and you watch a lot of liposuction videos today,
right,
the fat coming out of these people, particularly women, is literally orange, which is one of the colors of vitamin A. So, and it's fat storable. So it all kind of starts to fit together. And yeah, nickel. I got 2 studies now showing that the more nickel people, the higher nickel levels in people, the higher their BMI and the higher their body fat. So all these things are, when we are having trouble with body fat, which is a big, people are generally vain. It's okay. It's okay for people to be vain. Like, we are put here kind of like with the purpose of reproducing, and vanity is very important to that. Like, if we look at evolutionary biology, it's a very important thing. So people are very concerned about weight.
Yeah.
Which is fine. It is a marker of health in many ways.
Correct. Yeah.
Having difficulty with losing body fat, especially when people have done multiple diets and they just get to this stuck point and they're like, look, I could try to do all these different diets and I might lose 3 pounds or 5 pounds. I used to work in the diet industry, so I saw it firsthand. It's because they're toxic. And their body actually, when they start, every time you lose a bunch of weight and you're not detoxing properly at the same time, or maybe you're even doing toxic things to lose the weight, you dump a bunch of the toxicity into your bloodstream from the body fat. So the body fat's breaking down, right? Those toxins go into the blood. They then do things like damage the thyroid, slow down the thyroid. This is why they lose weight for a while and then it stops, because their thyroid function has slowed down, because they're dumping all this toxic stuff into their blood. And then eventually they will put it back in the blood. You can get rid of some of it, but some of it goes back into the blood. I have a whole live stream going over the research on that. And so then they kind of extra concentrate the toxicity in their blood, in their fat again. So they like dump it out, but the body still doesn't want it in the blood. So it pushes it back in. And then they become kind of smaller, more toxic people, which when they start to try to lose weight again, that extra concentrated toxicity in their body fat comes right out into their blood, shuts down their thyroid, and then they can't lose any weight. And so they keep trying, but they just can't get past this certain point. And that's what nobody's addressing, is that literal toxicity problem that's in the fat. So, yeah. And the body will make more fat to try to dilute it. How do we make a toxin less damaging? We dilute it. How would your body dilute fat-soluble toxins? It makes more fat to spread it out. So it's kind of it's this problem that nobody wants to do. The modern medical community will never talk about toxicity, because as soon as they do, all the fingers are going to point at them and go, why did you let this happen? They absolutely will never talk about toxicity. And I could show it in the research all sorts of places.
Right.
You'll have doctors saying, if you're alive, you're detoxing just fine. They will literally say that, when you can look at the research and go, these people are accumulating lead and nickel and cadmium in their tissues, and you're saying they're getting rid of it? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So, yeah.
Wow. Because I'm sitting here while you've been talking, I've been looking at the Mayo Clinic, and they put on here that vitamin A may reduce the risk of certain types of cancer, liver, colon, rectum, things like that. But my mind is blown by this conversation. I'm kind of all over the place when it comes to this one, just because of, hearing vitamin A is toxic to the body. it basically goes against everything that we've been taught like our whole life. You know, and true, I know research always gets better and things like that, but still attaching the label vitamin, because once you hear vitamin, you instantly think it's good for you.
You're hypnotized. You're self-hypnotized every time you say it. Yes.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah. Wow. When it comes down to, you know, some of this research that's out there that says that it can reduce the risk of cancers. People that have vitamin A deficiency, I'll use the air quotes deficiencies, are at risk for certain types of anemia, or even a condition called dry eyes. You know, I do know people that have been diagnosed with what's called dry eyes. I know military people. I'm a military veteran myself. I do know military people that suffer from that, were diagnosed as that, and are actually getting disability for having dry eyes. So I'm curious when it comes to that. Is it that we need to basically completely cut it out, or should we just say, all right, yeah, we don't need as much as what they say?
Well, yes, a lot of times what I do with some of these nutrients is I'll tell people, like, you don't supplement it, first of all. Like, don't put retin A on your face. That's literally retinoic acid. Don't take anything vitamin A related pharmaceutically or supplementally. No carotenoids, no, there's all sorts of sources of it. And then we get into, when you know the really high sources of it, like as an example, when you know that the colors of vitamin A in plants, because all vitamin A originates in plants, anything that you say is in milk is from the cow eating plants or supplemented. But orange, yellow, red, and dark green, those are the big vitamin A colors in plants. And so if we were to say, okay, so somebody says, well, what about sweet potatoes? Okay, well, if they're orange, they're going to be a very high source of vitamin A. And then if they said, well, and this is a more complex answer than what I'm saying, but if they said, well, what if I switched out white potatoes for sweet potatoes? Okay, great. You just cut down your vitamin A intake by a ton. Let's say we don't generally eat a whole lot of fish or shellfish, but if somebody said, well, I'm eating salmon, like the color of salmon is literally from astaxanthin, which is a carotenoid, which is a form of vitamin A. So what if they switch to white fish? Like then, so we can just almost do if somebody was like, I love to eat eggs. Okay, well, eat none of the yolks or eat less of the yolks, right? There's these simple changes. I mean, I could go through, I'll go through the biggest vitamin A sources in foods. We already talked about supplements and pharmaceuticals. There would be the parts of the plant that are yellow, orange, red, or dark green. So what do I mean when I say the parts of the plant that you eat? If you're eating those are very high in vitamin A. So like people say, well, what about a banana? Because it's yellow on the outside and it's whitish on the inside. Well, we don't eat the peel. So the banana is fine. Or if you peel a cucumber and you peel all the dark green off a cucumber, great. So like light green stuff, iceberg lettuce, romaine lettuce, not the tips, but and other things that are light green, those are pretty okay. So we have those in the fruits and vegetable area. Then we have dairy in general is going to be a high source of vitamin A. So we want to definitely limit that. Then there will be organ meats, liver, kidneys. Don't eat detox organs, folks. They're just not good for you. They don't taste good, and they store toxins. That's what they do. They accumulate toxins. If you want to look it up in the research, the word is accumulate. They don't use the word store. They use the word accumulate.
You broke my heart because I do love gizzards now.
Well, I mean, gizzard is actually that's the I just want to keep it straight. It's the that's the part where they have the rock in it, right? And they kind of if it's a mussel, I don't remember exactly what the gizzard is, but if it's a mussel bag, That's okay.
Okay.
So people say, well, what about intestines? Like menudo. I got the Hispanic folks going, what about menudo? It's intestines. I go, well, it's a muscle. Or people will say, what about the heart? And I'm like, it's a muscle. You don't want the things that are like liver and kidneys, where they're literal detox organs. Those are the worst. So if the gizzard is a muscle sac, which I think it is, that's fine.
It's kind of an organ. Yeah.
Well, they group them all into organ meats if it's not muscle meat. And that's where you can we can use our brain to go, well, muscle meat is muscle is the least toxic part of the animals to eat. I believe humans, animals, mammals, we tend to try not to store toxins in our muscles because movement is survival. Movement is life. And so we will put the toxins everywhere else, even including our brain, before we put them in the muscles, because we have to move. Like if you can't move, you're toast. Right. So even if you can't think well, if you can still move, you could still survive. Right. So that's why I think that. But anyway, what else was there? We generally don't do a lot of fish and shellfish, but that's microplastics. That's not necessarily a vitamin A problem. That's the mercury and microplastics and all that stuff. And then what else was there? I think those are and egg yolks are another big source. Those are the big things that we avoid. And people say, well, that doesn't leave much to eat. And I go, well, nobody said that being healthy in these days, when they're literally trying to poison us in the food every which way, is going to be easy. And
so I want to go back real quick, because I talked earlier about the whole going dairy free for a while, right? Well, one of the things that I was taught, and I've kind of stuck by this one, is only eating certain parts of animal, right? Hooved animals I don't eat, right? Okay. So I typically will stick to chicken, turkey, and fish. But when it comes to chicken and turkey, it's only the breast meat, and people are like, oh, that's the driest part. Well, that's the part that doesn't have any blood vessels, because, when they start to fatten these animals up, a lot of times they're injecting the animals, and the veins and all are found in the legs and the wings and the thighs. That's where all the veins are found. So that's where they hold all the chemicals that they inject them. That's what I was taught. And that's what I kind of stuck with. I kind of going back to your research, when you're saying just, the muscle meat is fine, I just kind of trying to see if there's any type of correlation to say, okay, you're wrong for it. Russ, you've been going about this all wrong. That thigh is perfectly fine. I'm looking for a line, some sort of gray area here that says, there's a little sliver of hope in all this.
Okay, so we haven't done any. Okay, let me lay it down here right off the bat.
Yeah.
If people followed every single dietary restriction or suggestion to avoid stuff that they saw on the internet, they will starve. There is literally nothing left to eat, because somebody can say that, people who are into iron overload will say, well, you can't eat red meat. It's too much iron and it'll cause you problems. And then people will say, oh, but the chicken and the turkey, they're feeding them soy and all this other stuff, and you can't get it clean, and so you can't eat that, and all of a sudden you literally run out of things to eat. And all of a sudden, if we start going, well, you can eat this part of we don't do the organ meats, so yes, we're saying we don't eat that part. There's a reason why organ meats are cheap. Nobody wants them. I mean, they taste horrible because they're full of toxics. So we can literally taste the toxicity in them. That's why they taste so bad.
Right.
So we do say don't eat that stuff. But then when we get into the muscle meats, like I have never made a distinction between, breast and thigh or anything like that. I've had people who I work with directly who are so sensitive to, it's either zinc or iron that this woman was sensitive to, where she could not eat chicken thighs. She could not eat dark meat. She could only eat the breast. And even still, she could overdo that. But we've been getting her back. We've been helping fix her so that she's now able to eat some red meat even, which is much higher in zinc and iron than the other ones. So when people are, it's literally, if we don't make some choices as to, if we don't limit our restrictions, then we could end up with nothing to eat. I remember very distinctly, I had a gentleman call me from a grocery store. He was a client of mine, and he called me and he said, "Doc, I'm in the grocery store right now." And he was following all sorts of people on what not to eat. And he said, "I literally can't eat anything in the store." And I said, "I didn't do that to you. You chose all these things to follow, and now you're stuck in that position. Like, I didn't do that to you. If you want to follow what I'm telling you, there's plenty of things you can eat." Like, people have done our approach, and we get people who have been the, if you wanted to call them the fallout or the failures of all sorts of other health approaches. Right. We get people after they've been kind of failed or discarded by all the other practitioners. We get the most challenging people, the most sensitive people, the people with the most issues, and everybody else. Like, I had one gentleman stay with me for a very long time. I wasn't able to help him at the time. We did help him once we figured out the low vitamin A thing. Yeah. He got better, but he stuck with me all that time because he said, "I have faith that you're going to figure this out." I told him, I said, "I literally don't have any more tools for you.
Right.
I'm not going to string you along. I'm not going to act like, I'm not going to keep taking your money and saying that I have something to fix you when I don't." I'm very honest like that. I'm ethical. And I'm like, I'm out of tools. And he said, "I'm going to stick with you because you're the only guy who doesn't think I'm lying or that I'm crazy." And I was like, "Okay, you want to stick with me? Of course I'm going to keep working on this."
Right.
And funny story, we find out later, when I started doing the low vitamin A thing, this gentleman had acid reflux so bad that he was down to eating, I think, 3 things at one point. He could only eat 3 different things. And even water gave him reflux.
Wow.
So he was basically a shut-in at home. He couldn't go out anywhere. He couldn't do anything. Stress would cause his reflux, like all this. And come to find out, I start doing the low vitamin A thing, and he's kind of watching me from, he's like, "Dr. Smith has done all these things in the past, like trying out these new approaches." He said, "I'm just going to wait on this one," because he knew a secret that I didn't. He said, "I'm going to wait and see if he sticks with this before I do it." And I stuck with it, and people were getting better. And then finally he comes out and he tells me, he said, "Well, my health got really bad after I did Retin A as a teenager," which is a form of vitamin A. It's related to Accutane. It's similar to Accutane, but it's different. That's also the stuff that they use as the chemical peel. Then he said, I grew up on an orange tree farm. Oranges, right? Orange.
Yeah.
He said some days he would just go out in the orange trees and just eat oranges all day. That was like all he ate. And then he started doing the low vitamin A stuff, and now all of his reflux is basically gone on a regular basis. And he told me that this is the power that we give people. He said, "I literally know that if I stray from the diet for too long, the symptoms will start coming back, and I know exactly how to make them go away again." He told me his brother does like a brick-fired pizza. And he's like, "I'm not going to say no to eating that." So he'll have it for, he'll go and eat the pizza and have it for a couple days, maybe leftovers. And he's like, after those couple of days, things start creeping back, because we're talking about cheese. We're talking about tomatoes, which are both big vitamin A things. And he's like, it starts coming back. And then I know he's like, I just got to get back on the diet for, be strict for maybe about 3 days, and all the stuff goes away. So he knows exactly. And it takes a couple days for it to build up, because that's what toxins do. They accumulate. Right. And then he's like, but he was pleased as punch. And I'm so happy that I could help him. I mean, he has been with me probably 16 years now.
Wow.
And I've only been doing the low vitamin A thing for 6, I think, maybe 2019. So maybe 7. Okay. And I've been doing it since then, and my eyes haven't fallen out, and all that stuff. So anyway, so there was that. Let me talk about the dry eye real quick though. If you look into the most common side effect of all medications out there, do you know what it is?
No.
It's dry eye. So the most common side effect among all pharmaceutical medications is dry eye. And if you were to look up symptoms of vitamin A toxicity, you would find dry eye there too. The crazy thing about symptoms of vitamin A toxicity and symptoms of supposed vitamin A deficiency is they are exactly the same list.
Wow.
So then you start going, okay, this doesn't seem to make sense on the top. But then as you learn more about the science of vitamin A and how they measure it by blood levels. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're taking a snapshot of your blood at one time. And it has been shown and stated multiple times in the research that your blood level does not reflect your stored levels or your tissue levels. Let me give you a quick example. There was a guy he technically had vitamin A deficiency in his blood. Okay. He had low vitamin A in his blood. The doctors, after talking to him, in this case study, they didn't say what he was eating. They didn't say what he was taking, like supplement wise, but they said they thought he had vitamin A toxicity. So with what they looked at in his diet and what his supplements or whatever, they said they saw his blood level of vitamin A was low, yet they still told him he had vitamin A toxicity. They did a biopsy of his liver. His liver was outrageously high in vitamin A, but his blood was low. They put him on a low vitamin A diet. And over the next 12 weeks, I think it was, his liver vitamin A went way down. They did another biopsy, and his blood vitamin A went up to above the normal range. It went up to vitamin A toxicity levels.
Oh, wow.
And one of the things they had to give him, I think he was on maybe some sort of vegan diet. He was on a very low protein diet before. We do know that. The doctors told him you need to get more protein. Well, there's two big things that help your liver to detox vitamin A is zinc and protein. If you don't have enough of those, we will see the blood level of vitamin A go down. And it's actually the vitamin A is getting stuck in the liver, so you don't see it. Because they won't even do liver biopsies in studies. They won't let anybody organize a vitamin A toxicity study where they actually do biopsies in living people.
Right.
The closest study we have, I think it was 2020, maybe earlier. They got 33 cadavers, 33 dead people.
Yeah.
And they did biopsies of their liver for vitamin A. A third of them, there's 27 people. A third of them, 9 of the 27 had diagnosable vitamin A toxicity in their liver. 33% of them.
Wow.
That the World Health Organization says a level of severe public health concern is 20% or above. And we had 33%. And I have other research from they've been pumping vitamin A into Africa forever. I have 2 papers on liver biopsies of Africans in the 50s and 60s showing that half of the population they tested were vitamin A toxic. And yet they're still giving them vitamin A shots. They give them vitamin A shots. The World Health Organization and Mr. Bill Gates gives them a vitamin A shot with their vaccines.
Wow.
So birds of a feather, if you know what I mean.
Wow.
So it's pretty ugly. It's pretty ugly.
We have definitely run long on this episode, but I have a couple more questions that I really feel like I'd do a disservice if I didn't ask these. So you mentioned the nickel poisoning or the nickel levels. Where and what should people be looking out for in as far as the foods and things that we're taking in? Because I've never looked at anything and said, oh yeah, this is where I'm getting my nickel from. I've not even heard of this before. So what should people be looking out for?
Well, this is why this is so important. What we're finding is that the body really dislikes nickel, and it can get rid of it quite quickly. It can get rid of it so fast that what we call the detox dumping symptoms are quite strong. The body wants rid of this stuff yesterday, and it has the means to do it. So the big places for nickel, this is one of the issues with my people now. I think the last 2 live streams that I did, the most 2 recent from today, I think they were both 4 hour. I do 4-hour live streams on a regular basis. I try to keep them to 2, but anyway, they were what I call my barn burners. And one was showing where I literally connected in the research the top 10 causes of death in the US. And I connected it in the research to nickel. Like, as I could connect all 10 in various ways. It doesn't mean that nickel is the only thing doing it. It just means that you can look at the levels of nickel in people and see that the risk of death goes up from these different causes. So there was that. Then the next one was the what to do about it.
Right.
So that was the whole big one. So the big areas, the biggest area is in foods. That is the one that people are doing, where they're absorbing the most. Now, one of the problems with what I used to do was I was encouraging people to, and we were regularly, so the key thing here is we were regularly getting people better. So our base approach was working. However, some of the foods that I really recommended, like high soluble fiber foods, tend to grab on to the most nickel out of the ground. So while we were helping detox, soluble fiber helps you detox, helps grab onto stuff. It's gels, and that gelling grabs onto toxic stuff, toxic bile, especially.
Mm-hmm.
But we were also taking a nickel, and over time that was causing people some other issues. Mm-hmm. And me as a practitioner, I always look at if people are getting new issues, if I'm doing good, which is like if I wasn't doing good in the first place, I would abandon what I was doing. But if we're doing good and then other things, niggling things are showing up as we go, then I take responsibility and I say, I'm missing something. What am I missing? We're doing good. We're doing 90% good, but what's this 10% that's creeping up on some people? And that's where one day on Twitter, somebody was posting about nickel, and I went, like if I was completely egotistical and arrogant and just protective of my approach, I could have just looked at it and been like, that's nothing. I'm going to ignore that.
Yeah.
But I saw it, and it was somebody who I trusted who was getting better avoiding nickel. And I was like, I'm going to look into this. And then all of a sudden I looked into it and I was like, oh, wow, crap. This is like comparable to lead. Like this is like the lead that we don't talk about. So high soluble, the biggest foods. Now I want people to understand before I go into this, I'm not going to go, we don't have time to go into it in too much detail. However, the low nickel diet is not technically forever. Most people do it for about 3 months and they get their nickel levels way down. They feel a lot better. And then they find that they can tolerate more nickel foods in their diet if they choose to. Okay. But generally the highest nickel foods are going to be whole grains, beans, nuts, seeds, and the worst offender of all is chocolate. So I had been having people do lots of whole grains and beans. Like that was one of the biggest things.
Hurting my heart, man.
I know. I'm just saying, like this is, they're literally, the bad guys are in fertilizers. They're literally contaminated with nickel. Whether that's on purpose or not, I don't know. But it's sneaking in. This is where people can say that I'm just calling these alerts on all these things, and they'll say that there's nothing left to eat. And I'm kind of like, that's their goal. Their goal is to move us all to a plant-based diet. What's the lowest nickel foods? Animal-based foods. And they want to move us all to a plant-based diet, which will be high copper, high vitamin A, high nickel, high oxalate, high manganese, all these things that are connected to increased human disease. So the nickel thing is, so I've been doing it, and I can tell you that, well, since we're on a man podcast here. So I've always had good testosterone. I've always had good sexual function. Mm-hmm. Okay. But one of the things that have always confused me, since I had those things and I have, good muscle mass and, good testosterone and all that stuff, was I didn't get, morning wood was not ever a regular thing for me. And all the testosterone experts out there are like, you have to have this. And I'm like, I don't think that's true because, testosterone and libido don't even correlate that much. They correlate, but they're not always like, as the joke is, right? You could have a guy with low testosterone, and if you put an attractive woman in front of him who expresses sexual interest in him, he will get horny. Like he doesn't have to have testosterone to get horny. So anyway, so I didn't have this as anything regular at all. So I'd always kind of be like, well, is this a problem? Is it whatever? Now that I've been doing the low nickel diet, and I've been doing it for probably about a month and a half now. All of a sudden, it's happening daily.
Yeah.
And I'm going, what changed?
Wow.
I mean, it's just the low nickel. And so it's been very interesting. And so now I'm kind of excited to see what happens with my testosterone. And I mean, I have research on testosterone going down with nickel, with the estrogen problems, with prolactin problems, with progesterone problems. Like it's completely connected to everything. And the other thing, so the things we work on, foods. I mean, if people want to go out and Google like a low nickel diet, you can find all sorts of stuff out there. There is a PDF from a doctor out there that I don't trust at all. She recommends organ meats, which accumulate nickel. There's many mistakes in it. So there's a low nickel diet PDF out there that I don't recommend at all. My live streams are probably it's 4 hours, but you can speed it up and you can go. And I have documents linked in the info box. So if you want to just go to the documents that I made, you can go there. Anyway, so the big things are food and then water supply.
Okay.
Like literally, if you have stainless steel pipes or pipes with nickel in them and the water sits overnight in them and you don't flush the water before, let's say you were going to drink some of that water and you just pour yourself a glass of the first draw of that water, there can be a huge amount of nickel in there from just soaking in the pipes overnight. We found out recently, my girlfriend at her house in Idaho on her well water, it's very normal. See, I was kind of going up to Idaho and I was looking around going, it's really kind of like, outdoorsy and all this stuff. And I'm looking around at everybody going, why doesn't everybody look healthier? Like, shouldn't we be looking healthier here if we got all this, everybody's on well water and everybody's, outside and doing all this. And then I find out that all the well water in northern Idaho, at least, is got too much iron and too much nickel in it. And I'm going, this is a problem. So right now what I'm working on, I got, we do RO for the drinking water. We got a shower filter that takes out 99.9% of the nickel. And now I'm working on getting a whole house filter for her house because I'm going to be moving up there. We're getting a whole house filter that takes out all the nickel and lots of other toxic metals too. And I think that's going to really, really help. So there's the water supply, which I go over in the video too. And then the last thing is just people will really obsess over cookware because they you can literally see, the metal pan in front of you and you're going, I'm not supposed to be eating nickel. And here I am cooking on this metal pan. There's a brand out there called Homichef, HOMICHEF, that is nickel free, stainless steel. It's made by I think a Japanese company makes the stainless steel, but here's the weird thing. If people don't cook acidic foods, like overly acidic foods, like tomatoes are known to leach. They'll leach iron off of cast iron pans. Tomatoes will leach nickel off of stainless steel pans. So if you're not cooking acidic things and you get a low nickel or a zero nickel cookware set, that's about all I worry about with that. The big things is, let me give you an example of how important this nickel thing is. We had a woman, a client of mine, she fixed her water supply of the nickel problem.
Okay.
Within 4 days, she said her tremor was gone. And she started having detox symptoms. She just fixed her water supply. This is how bad our bodies want to get rid of this.
Right.
I can't remember. I just had another testimonial today. Oh, somebody said their hemorrhoids went away in 2 days of going low nickel.
Oh my.
Like, I was like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
We're seeing, so the key thing to know about this is with the low nickel diet is that it's strong medicines deserve strong respect. And if you jump in with it, if anybody who's watching, you may want to wait until like my next live stream or two.
Yeah.
Before you dive in, because I did the low nickel diet with no detox help that I didn't know about the things to do during that specific thing. And it was a butt kicker. It was really not fun. But now I'm getting to the point where I'm seeing these other changes in like my hormonal and sexual function that are new, that I'm going, wait, that's never happened before. Even though, I had testosterone of 900 and all that. And wow, that didn't happen before. So very important things are happening. And the detox does end, but I'm figuring out ways to make it much more bearable for people. Yeah.
Now, does it impact the vitamin A deficiency? Well, sorry, I'm not going to say deficiency. Let's correct my term. Does vitamin A and zinc, I'm sorry, not zinc, nickel,
yeah,
impact men and women differently? Because we've talked about vitamin A, and you kind of hit it on how it impacts testosterone. But women are more estrogen based, and so is the impact completely different on men and women?
Okay, so it's more of just the way we think of it. Like, I don't tend to have big differences in how I treat men and women. Like, if it's a toxin in men, it's a toxin in women. And so we are just kind of like, we just get these things down. Women, the issue with women is that women are slower at detoxing in general. What we know from the research is women make less bile than men. So that means that they are less able to get rid of toxicity. And one of the things we also know about estrogen and women is that women are much faster at creating body fat to store toxins, right? Because they got to keep it away from the baby. Like, they're literally making toxin storage away from the uterus so that they don't poison the baby. And so with that, the more easily accumulating fat and the slower detox, like, women are in for a longer ride, if you will. And then women are also often with the things that society suggests they do, like, let's say, cosmetics. Women are literally absorbing more toxins through their skin all day, every day, and they're doing the scented stuff. And like, anything you put on your skin, folks, you should assume that, like, if you wouldn't eat it, don't put it on your skin.
Right.
That's the simple thing, because your skin is literally eating it. It's going into your system. They did there was a study on sunscreen ingredients, the toxic ingredients in sunscreen, and they had people put them on. There was 8 ingredients, and then they measured their blood 24 hours later, and they found all 8 of those compounds in their bloodstream. So if you're putting it on your skin, it's going in your bloodstream. So that's why if you want to go as far as possible, it is, if you wouldn't eat it, don't put it on your skin. Now, people are going to violate that all sorts of ways, but I'm just saying, like, that's the reality of it. So, but yeah, with it, we're just, I just saw a paper yesterday where they had women in Sri Lanka with endometriosis, and all the women with endometriosis had higher nickel levels than the women without it. Wow. So we got studies on breast cancer has higher nickel in it than other tissues. It's really, like, when we get down to it, we're not trying to, like, fix estrogen or fix testosterone. We are simply removing poisons and giving the body what it needs. And then we assume that God's grand design will then make the system run as well as it should. So so we don't, I can find research on all these things, generally to connect them, but we just kind of go, once we know enough to help people get better. Too many people spend too much of their time on the internet obsessing over the minutia and what's the mechanism of this and what's it doing. And I go, is it showing up as a poison in people? Like, when people take in more of it, does it cause problems? Okay. Yeah. Okay. When people get less of this, do problems go away? Yeah. What else do I need to know? Yeah. Like, I don't need to know how gravity works to know that I don't want to jump off a cliff onto rocks. Or like, I don't need to know how electricity works to turn on the switch on my wall.
Right.
I just need to know that things are toxic. And then if there's shady interests behind it, pushing it, then I go, that's even more of a reason for me to not use it. So
understood. So when it comes down to your programs and you mentioned your seminars, how can people find and follow and get more information about those?
Well, the easiest place to find all of my stuff is nutritiondetective.com. That is our main website. That is the main hub. my live streams, the biggest, we're on Rumble and YouTube. YouTube is obviously the bigger one. If you look under Nutrition Detective most places on the internet, you'll find me. So yeah, Rumble Nutrition Detective, and YouTube is Nutrition Detective, and I'm on Twitter at NutriDetect. We're working on TikTok more, but again, it's Nutrition Detective there. So, and the if people were interested in the program, well, if they wanted to sign up for my email newsletter, get a taste of what we do, that website is madnessofmodernnutrition.com. It's like a 17 or 18 email series that you get instead of a PDF.
Right.
And then if people wanted to look into the do-it-yourself Love Your Liver program, which is where all of this is, the nickel stuff isn't in there yet because it's that new, but it's members.nutritiondetective.com. And that is our private network where people can go in there and find all the information and chat with other people in a non-troll based environment. So there's nobody in there messing with things. I joke that I rule it with an iron fist, and I don't put up with people coming in there to cause problems. If somebody wants to come in there and tell me everything that they know and how they know better, they can go make their own network.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Oh.
Understood. Dr. Garrett, this has been tremendous and very eye-opening. And yes, you have ruined some foods for me, seeing that I just went to the grocery store this morning. But
well, this happened to a lot of people in the program when they were like used to all these beans and whole grains. And then I'm like 3 months of maybe not doing those at all. And so a lot of people were kind of like, what do I do? And I said, keep them around. Maybe you'll use them later.
I mean, I'm one that I travel a lot, and a lot of times I travel by car, and a lot of times I'm snacking on nuts and stuff when I'm driving, just to keep myself awake, just to, keep myself from getting bored while I'm driving cross country and stuff. So it's like, now it's like, wow, Ned, I know I gotta rethink my life. Maybe we're just gonna have to fly everywhere now so I can get there quick.
I can tell you though, since I've been doing the low nickel thing, I can tell you that I didn't feel like I had blood sugar stability issues before, but I can tell you that my blood sugar seems like, just in terms of if I don't eat and I get hungry, even there's no crashing. I'm just hungry, and I'm going, wow, this is like, there's no irritability. There's none of that stuff. So a lot of us are eating right to kind of maintain our blood sugar.
So I'm going to make sure that my wife gets on this right now.
There's connecting diabetes to nickel too. I have papers on that. Metabolic syndrome, diabetes, weight gain. I have like all the stuff that America is suffering. I have connections to it all. Yeah.
Wow. Like I said, this has been very eye-opening. Manspace Nation, go check out the website, get the information, sign up for the classes, check out the seminars, go on the YouTube, follow everything that's out there, because I like to say an informed person is a better person. So go out there and get the knowledge, Manspace Nation. Dr. Smith, once again, thank you so much for being here. And we definitely appreciate you. We'd love to have you back again in the future when we can talk some more, because we've gone an hour and a half now, and I feel like we're still scratching the surface. There's so much more to talk about. But until next time, Manspace Nation, you know what we do at the end. We are out of here.
No gimmicks, just game that my sure in sight. They shine like the city on a Friday night. Man talk, real talk, that's the way they get blessed. Giving knowledge and some laughs in the same finesse. From life goes to the jokes that hit. They the tag team champs, yeah, little chick with the wit. So pull up a chair, let the stress digest. From the beat drops, you know the rest. You go chillin' with